Whenever someone is pulling a gun, you hear so much. It's like the knives in movies. Like when you take out a knife, it's like
yeah, exactly. You hear the glint of it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Cut to Reveal. I am currently going to be cutting an action scene for Prowler, the feature that I've been working on. I've talked about it. I wanted to ask you, Erwann, because you have cut more action scenes than me and Peter combined. I'm going to say it, even though you told me not to. You are our local expert. The question to you is like, what makes a good action?
I've got, I don't know, maybe 7 to 8 very short action movies. They were designed and directed by SAG Award-winning stuntman Jean-Charles Rousseau. The highest point of his career was to be the lead stunt double for Daniel Craig in No Time to Die in James Bond. And after that, he decided that he wanted to try and direct. So I started to work with Jean-Charles on a short film. Our relationship grew to do many other short movies. And I learned a lot while I was cutting those because there were fist fights, shootouts, chases. It's not a different set of skills that any editor would have, but there are little tricks that you can use to make an action scene feel better and look better. So what I call maximum impact is jump cutting back a few frames when cutting from one angle to another on the same action, like someone giving a punch. You see the punch going in, then you reverse shot on the person getting punched in the face, and it's such a quick thing giving a punch, like it lasts a few frames. For the audience to understand, you want to revert back a few frames the next shot, so it feels like it hits even harder, and you have time to really see the punch going in. It may sound weird, but in real time, when you watch it, you don't see the few frames added on the second shot.
It's an overlap edit, but the one that you can't really feel. Overlap edit is where you really show like the repetitive movement. It's so striking, it accentuates every cut, like it takes you out of the zone in a way. In this case, when you're like cutting action, you want that overlap edit, but just on like 2 or 3 frames, not more than that.
You need action scene readability. Something you often see in bad action scenes is that the audience is confused as to what's going on. I can take, for example, a fist fight scene in the James Bond movie Quantum of Solace. They were trying to emulate the Jason Bourne style of action. Lots of quick cuts. Sometimes you could barely understand what was going on. In that scene, you have 2 guys dressed in black. Both are blonde. Both are the same height and build. It could very well be Daniel Craig's stunt double fighting against him, to be honest. And at some point, they just jumped the line, and I was like, wait, what's going on? So this is James Bond, and this is the other guy. It was really confusing.
Jumping the line, by the way, refers to 180-degree rule. When you have 2 characters interacting with each other, when you connect them, you create a line, and staying on one part of the line creates this continuity so that they look in different directions. One looks to the left, the other looks to the right. If you jump the line, then you have both of them looking in the same direction, so they're not looking at each other anymore. At least that's the impression when we're watching the movie.
If you ever have to jump the line, which often happens, you need to find ways to make it clear, and sometimes like reverting back to a wider shot helps the audience understand. Least well-known editing principle for the public is eye tracing. In action, shots can be short while things move so fast within the frame that it's easy to confuse the viewer. You don't want to have your viewers have to go from an action happening on the left end of the screen to witness a quick punch going off and then see the punch land on the right side of the screen in the very next shot. This would mean that in under a second, you're asking your viewers' eyes to travel from left to right, and while doing so, for a couple of frames or more, they are actually missing the action. This guy edits made a video about it, but he talks about Mad Max Fury Road versus one of the latest Transformers movies. How Michael Bay's action scenes in the Transformers movies are very much chaos cinema. You're always a bit confused as to what's going on.
There are these moments where I don't even know where to look yet. I have to like really find it.
And Mad Max Fury Road always directs your attention. When there's a lot of quick cuts, they always do it dead center of the frame. So there's a lot of quick cuts, but you never feel confused because it's always happening right in the middle of the screen, and that's where your eyes are at.
I made a video about eye trace. We think about where the viewer looks when he sees the image. I said that the rule of 6 from Walter Murchis in The Blink of an Eye is kind of incorrect, because in fast-paced sequences, the ratio of the things that you have to take into account is incorrect, because eye trace is much more important in fast-paced films than it is in drama where you have slower-paced edits.
finding beats within a fight is important. Shootouts and fistfights are so intense, action scenes are so intense that you often want to give a break for maybe 5 seconds to the audience. So they gather themselves, as the character could gather himself, take a break just to be able to go back to the fight.
Reloads the gun or something like that.
And it's visual storytelling, but you want to go to a wider shot for this, for example. Because it's so intense, you're asking so much from the audience, like quick cutting, close up, quick cutting. At some point, I need to have a break. Give me a wider shot so I can appreciate the situation and be less involved emotionally. I often see action movies where some punches or kicks that look way too slow to make me believe it would hurt anyone.
3, 2, 1, action!
There's actually a trick that in some situations can help fix that. You can take a few frames and suddenly, like, it hits. You take a frame here, most of the audience won't notice.
Basically, you're time remapping, but with cutting frames.
Yeah, exactly.
A few moments later.
3, 2, 1, action!
And I see that a lot in action movies, like in big action movies. And this is a very, very classic one, but also a very effective one. When cutting a hard-hitting action scene, think hard on sound. It could make a world of difference. And I'm not talking just about punch sound or gunfire sound. It's about the cloth movement in the air that comes before the punch lands, that propels the punch in a way. It's about the grunts of the guy getting kicked in the face, the missed punch, and kicks cutting through the air. You want to maximize sound during fight scene and shootouts. In Terminator 2, Schwarzenegger's weapon all have iconic sound. His shotgun is the result of mixing around 10 different sounds. That's why it looks awesome. Because it sounds awesome.
I think that's the one thing that I was kind of worried about. Is like when you don't have a library or easy access to sound effects, and it's like, okay, well, how am I gonna do this? Like, obviously, like you said, you know, the go-to is like, okay, I want the gun blast, I want the knuckles on the skin or the kick, but then what is it? The smaller stuff, like you said, the stuff that you don't think about, the swishing of the cloth, the whipping sound of a kick or a punch coming through, or even as much as like the click of a gun. Those really, really small things, thinking about it as a heightened sense, like you're gonna hear everything.
Because it's a spectacle of violence, action movies. And it's about making it out of this world so we can enjoy it, not for the violence that it's showing, but for the spectacle that it is, because it's so unreal. I hate violence in reality, but I love action movies. So how do I reconcile with that? It's because it's so over the top. And part of what makes action enjoyable, it's the sound, it's out of this world. It makes violence sexy.
To add to that sound aspect, when you play an action scene with just sound, without visuals, you will still probably know what's going on pretty much. Not everything, but you know most of it, right? And visuals without sound are just boring.
On the other hand, if you watch a bad action scene without sound, you're completely lost. A good action scene without sound, you're not gonna get confused. Like, it's not gonna hit nearly as hard, but you will understand what's going on. You will be able to enjoy what's going on.
We talked about this with Eddie Hamilton. He said that they were checking everything without sound because like sound was done perfectly in Top Gun Maverick, but they would still like play everything silent to see if it's understandable without sound at all.
I won't really use music or sound effects. We just imagine them as we're going. Chris McQuarrie and I really enjoy working like that.
Because sound can be a crutch and you want to be able to see, like, does it work on a visual level?
All right, and that's it for this episode. Listener, if you have anything to add to that, please let us know by either commenting or sending us an email or reaching out to us on Instagram. With that being said, we hope you have a great day. So take care.